My name is Jim Baum. I went to school at Dartmouth and then took a work-study program my senior year, which I worked for the Boston Redevelopment Authority, their planning division, and took classes part-time at MIT. I came back to join a family business here. My grandfather arrived in Morris, Illinois, and started a business here in 1874, what was known as a dry goods store at that time. But as soon as people in the community found out about my planning background, planning became an avocation, which I wasn't paid for, but became very interesting, and the experience has been most enlightening over the years. The difficulty was that there had never been planning in Morris. There were no zoning ordinances, no building codes, and the first thing I was asked to tackle was being chair of the local commission to write both the building codes and zoning. The zoning turned out to be an interesting issue simply because it was very threatening to people, and it was not well received. I was at one point almost asked to go back to the East, where I'd gotten all these terrible ideas. But as it turned out, there were some good things that happened, and that got me particularly involved with issues having to do with downtown. And most of what I've done most of my life is worked, because I am in retailing, have worked with on both a state and a national level, working with small stores in small towns all over the country. And so that I think if I have any expertise at all, it is in the area of what's happened to small towns and small businesses over a period of time. The interesting part of what's happened in downtown planning all over the country, I believe, is the emphasis which has moved from design and street layouts, a little to do with zoning, but it was all very design oriented. I've worked for the National Main Street Center in Washington, D.C. as a going into some communities and working with them, and the old Main Street program I was never very fond of. And even here in Morris, you would think, at that time I was serving on the state board for Main Street, and you'd think that we would be a member of that Main Street community. We are not, because I felt that the emphasis of the Main Street programs at the time were primarily architectural driven. Fix up your buildings, and that will solve all the problems of downtown. It became very obvious to me that should not be the emphasis of the organization. We formed something which was called the Morris Downtown Development Partnership, which was based on the Main Street model, in that it was a mixture of promotion, building design, putting an organization together, and the same package that Main Street really has in its own organizations. Over the years, what we have done in Morris, which is, I would say, has been a successful venture, in that if you tour around Illinois, outside of the Chicago metropolitan area, I'd like to think our little town of 15,000 probably is the best downtown of anybody in Illinois outside of suburban Chicago. The major drivers of smaller towns, larger towns too, success in the past has always been retailing, and that's what I did. In today's market, retailing is not what it used to be, and that means that was a lot of talk years ago about the mix of stores, and the mix of shopper goods stores versus convenience stores was one of the things you tried to build and enhance in downtown areas. That has almost become a moot subject today because there are not national chains which will go into most downtown, certainly smaller communities. And so the dynamics of shopping, which was the mainstay of downtowns, has disappeared, and the way we used to know it. But there's new dynamics. Department stores, shoe stores, jewelry stores, apparel stores tend to be disappearing in downtowns everywhere, and unfortunately sometimes replaced by too many very marginal stores selling used clothing and with very little focus. So it has a lot to do with people finding niches of businesses which can be successful, that have to have they can't look just like a home-owned, home put-together business, but one which people have a real idea of what the kind of products that they want to sell and how the story they want to tell to their customer. There are some places that the market won't react the way that you think it ought to react, and that's it leads to projects which are never completed, which never meet the kind of economic goals that people think they should, and there's still a lot of planning. If somebody doesn't make their living at it, who is more interested in the physical appearance of it than it is the economic success of it.